We want to go back to this story that has captured the attention of so many people, really internationally. There's new information on this so-called thrill kill murder of a college athlete in Oklahoma that suggests that the young men who told police that they killed Chris Lane basically for the fun of it, basically out of boredom, was what one of them said, may have had more of a plan going on here. James Johnson says that his son was targeted by those same teenagers, and he says that this entire thing may be nothing more than some kind of twisted gang initiation. Johnson told that to the Sydney Morning Herald. He said, the way I understand it, this man's from Oklahoma, there's a list that pops up with my son's name at the top of the list and 4 others that they say they're going to bump off. I don't think it was an initiation. I know it was an initiation. My son told me it was an initiation. They live in the area where all of this happened, and he claims that his son has had dealings with these young men. And we use the term loosely. Joined now by David Webb, host of The David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot and co-founder of Tea Party 365 and a Fox News contributor, and Tamara Holder, also a Fox News contributor. Welcome to you both. You know, I don't know what's worse, you know, kids killing out of boredom, as these suspects appear to have done, or the rising fear of gang operations that may have been involved here, David?
It's a combination of both, Martha, and what we really also see is a moral decay. When you look at these kids that are running wild, gangs are going to try and come into neighborhoods. That's what they do. It's part of their model. But when you have families that are involved, parents are involved in a community that's not in decay, moral or otherwise, you can resist a lot of that. This is a wanton disregard for life. This is a tragedy of the American community, and while there are many people that fight this, what we're not hearing from are the people that have a voice to go out and say this is wrong and forcibly work on this issue.
You look at deaths by guns in this country, right? And the analogies to Trayvon Martin have been discussed. Some people don't like there to be any connection or in those discussions, but they are, you know, they both happened recently and both raise issues of race. Tamara, and of guns. So what are we dealing with here, and is it elevated by this new information?
Well, I actually don't think it's about race as much as it is what David said, the moral decay of society. But why do we have that? Because we're cutting education from our schools. We're cutting the arts. These are kids who said they were bored. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it wasn't a gang initiation and what they said was true. Why were they bored? They weren't involved in extracurricular activities. They weren't involved in sports. They were running wild, as David says.
Actually, they were involved in sports.
But if they were running wild, they were not. They had a lack of anything going on in their lives that made them not bored. And the other issue is, I really don't think it's about race, because we have a gun problem. The story that you talked about earlier today, was a kid who walked in with mental health issues, which is another issue, mental health issues, with an AK-47 into a school. And it was a black woman who talked him, the white boy, out of that. All of the white mass shootings, or all of the mass shootings, are white men who are doing this,
okay,
not blacks.
I've got to correct something Tamara said, though. We don't have a gun problem. What we have is someone that had a gun illegally. You're not allowed to own a weapon, as this young man did, and I use that term loosely. So he had an illegal gun. The legal gun ownership is not the issue here. The fact that we have a system where it's not just education, but single-parent birth rate, when you look at the growing percentage of single-parent births, and people who, frankly, aren't qualified to have children and raise them correctly are just having babies. It's generational.
But you don't have a resolution for this. Now we have, this is now, Martha, an international problem.
Taking guns off the street is not the issue here.
I never said that. I'm not anti-gun, and let me make that very clear. But now we have an international problem where other countries, Australia, and we get a lot of tourism from Australia, and Australia has a lot of power throughout the country, saying don't travel to America. Do you know how much that hurts American society?
But we also have to look at this realistically. And Martha, we get these calls for don't travel to America, and look, I understand the grief of the parents. There is no amount, no parent should bury their child. But Australia and these other countries, England included, when they cut guns out of their society, the anti-gun laws, incidences of violence still went up phenomenally.
Understood.
The gun's not the issue, the community is the issue.
You know, we have to figure out the core of the problem here. What on earth causes the desensitization of these young people to the point where they are able, whether they're trying to get into a gang or whether they're bored or whatever it is, to say, we're going to get off the couch and go out and kill this innocent man? There's a problem going on here, and I think it's related to everything that we talked about. It's related to Newtown. It's related to Trayvon Martin. It is a disregard for life that is such a serious issue that is creeping into towns like this one, where people said these things never happen, and we need to face the facts, whatever they are. And you've raised a number of them.
Where are the civil rights? Where are the civil rights leaders around this country?
Well, this is a black boy, a biracial boy, and a white boy. I just want to state for the record: a black boy, a biracial boy, and a white boy.
Where are they? They talk about they care about the community. And I'm talking about the community now.
Yeah.
Then go out into that community and tell people and help them and work with them to realize that this is not a way forward for you or your life.
David, if they were there, you would say that they're there for the cameras and whatever.
That's not what I'm saying.
Now, I just want to say one other issue that I think is very important for people watching, whether or not they agree with me, and that's the Facebook issue. The Facebook issue is something that this man, Mr. Johnson, said that he was threatened, that his son was threatened by these kids. Also, the almost shooter of the AK-47 had apparently threatened his brother on Facebook. Facebook, Twitter, all of these threats are major issues that we have to deal with in America.
Social media has upped the ante. It amps up these kids, and it is a place where they are putting out these messages in such a vile way in this case, and we need to get our arms around it. So many of these huge issues.
It's a big part of the disconnect between human life and technology, and it desensitizes.
We're going to talk about this a lot more. Thanks, you guys. David, Tamara, thanks. Good to see you both.